Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Do you have any grafts at home that are starting to grow pups or branches at the base of the rootstock? Or how about plants that you'd like to grow solitary or that should grow solitary and are starting to grow pups or branches at the base? Stick around and I'm going to go over what I like to do and the reasons why I like to do it. So before we can get into exactly what it is that I like to do with these plants that produce pups or branches, we just briefly have to go over a little plant biology or cactus biology so that when I tell you what I'm about to do, it makes a little more sense and you don't think that I'm crazy. So cacti and succulents produce hormones that trigger different or various processes within their biology, right? They use hormones to get things happening like growth, the production of flowers, production of seed, etc. So whenever a plant senses that it has a lot of exposure to sunlight and it's receiving enough moisture to create an extra branch, the plant goes ahead and deploys a hormone to the location where it's receiving sunlight and to the location where it senses is optimal for the growth of a new extension of itself, which is basically a pup or a branch. The reason why the plant does this is because it wants to take advantage of every last bit of moisture that it's exposed to before the rain season stops. And in order to do that, the plant needs to grow as much vegetative tissue as possible so that when the rain comes, it's able to absorb as much moisture as quickly as possible and fill up that vegetative tissue before it goes back into drought. So obviously, whenever you have a graft or a rootstock and you have a scion, usually the scion is going to be the plant that grows the slowest because obviously that's the plant we're trying to push to grow faster. So the plant is going to somehow, it's not that they know this because it hasn't been proven yet, at least, that they have intelligence, but the plant sort of can sense that the top tissue grows slower than the bottom tissue. So it, instead of deploying more growth hormone to the top scion, it starts creating these growth pups or branches at the base because the bottom part of the plant or the rootstock part of the plant is the faster growing of the two species. So now that we understand a little bit of what's going on inside of the plant, let's talk about resources. Now we know that cacti and succulents live in areas of extreme drought. They like to live in nutrient deficient or nutrient poor soils. So they don't have a lot of resources to just throw around and waste, right? So the resources within the plant's anatomy are finite. That means the hormones that it needs to trigger the growth within its tissues is finite. Also, the amount of carbohydrates or the energy, carbohydrates are sort of a universal token for energy within not only animals, like human beings. We consume carbohydrates to be able to produce or to store energy within our bodies as fat. Plants do exactly the same, but they don't use fat. Instead, they use complex sugars in a different way. They produce tissues that are able to absorb and store moisture so that they're able to survive through the drought periods that come after the rains. So if we know that the purpose of a cactus graft is to push that scion to grow as fast as possible, and like we mentioned, the resources within the plant's anatomy are finite. Well, if we allow this plant to grow more and more pups of the rootstock, those pups are always going to suck out more of the resources from the plant than the scion because they're faster growing. So they're able to metabolize a lot faster and they're able to create more vegetative tissue faster than the scion. That means the plant will effectively prioritize the branches at the bottom over the scion, which is the total opposite of what we want, right? We're trying to cultivate the scion and make the scion grow faster. So we don't really want the plant to use its survival mechanisms that are effectively telling it to produce as much of the tissue that grows fastest as possible, to be able to survive periods of drought. We know that the plant's not going to have to use these survival mechanisms in cultivation. We are effectively watering it and making sure that it stays alive. So we can go ahead and get rid of these branches so that the plant doesn't invest any more of the resources into the branches that we are just not interested in cultivation. So we're going to go ahead and remove them. And you can go about this in two ways. You can either use a sharp edge or a knife, or you can use tweezers to simply try to pull them off. And what I like to do is I try to use the tweezers first, and then if the tweezers don't work, then we will move forward with a sharper object. But I like to use tweezers because you don't want to create any more of a wound than necessary. And if you're able to just pluck these off, and most of the times you are, one of these pups I see already has some roots of its own. So maybe these are ready to be just plucked off, and I won't have to use a sharp object. So let's try to use the tweezers first, and if it doesn't work, then we'll move forward with a knife. Now all you're gonna do is use your tweezers to gently rock them back and forth, and you're gonna feel right away if they want to come off or not. See, this one was pretty easy, came right off. And these, you can go about this two ways. You can leave them out to dry as they are, or you can cover them or lightly dust them with a little bit of sulfur antifungal powder. I'm going to try to root them without using the sulfur powder just this time. I usually sprinkle a little bit of sulfur powder on them just to be safe, because I do live in a very high humidity area here in South Florida. But I did hear from one of my followers that sulfur is toxic for animals and for the environment. So I'm going to try not to use sulfur. And if you use it at home, guys, be careful not to spill it, because if you do spill it, like I said, it is toxic to plants and insects. So not plants, I'm sorry, but yeah, it's toxic for the environment. You don't want to be spilling that around your garden. So as you can see, they're coming off pretty easily. And I'm gonna go ahead and take not all of these off, but most of them. You can take all of them off. I like to let them grow at least 1 centimeter before I pluck them off, because all of these branches we're cutting off, guys, all you need to do is place them on some dry soil, wait a week, maybe 10 days, and then start watering them as if they were regular plants, and you're gonna start seeing them grow roots of their own, and they're gonna grow into plants of their own in no time. So you just have to make sure they are like I said, at least 1 centimeter in size. Depending on the species, they might have to be a little larger, or they might be a little bit smaller and not have a problem. But what you want is for them to have enough energy inside of their tissue to produce root and start absorbing moisture before they die off. If they're too small, they will dry out completely before they're able to absorb any moisture, and they'll die off. So you want to wait until they're at least 1 centimeter in size. All of these are pretty big. There's another one. Got one more under the soil. I'm not going to bother too much with these that are under the soil because I don't want to disturb the root. Root systems in cacti and succulents are very sensitive. And if you mess with them too much, if you pull them from their soil, if you mess with the roots too much, then they stop growing right away. They just go into like I guess it's into like shock, and they stop growing. So you want to mess with the root systems as little as possible. These have some pretty gnarly spines, so I don't want to mess with them. Yeah, you see, this one was already going into the soil. This is another reason why you want to plug these out. This plant will do a lot better now when I plant it into its own pot and it has enough space to grow root. So that's just one more reason why you want to make sure you pull these out. You don't want to drain resources out of your graft, and also you want to give this plant a chance, because I might use this to make another graft later on. This one's a little trickier. There we go. This one was also rooting into the soil. Look at that. Beautiful. We have one more growing down under the soil. I'm gonna try to get it out. Oh, that was easy. Off. And here we go. That's all of them. And that was it, guys. Quick and painless. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? So now you're gonna give your grafts more of a chance to grow just a scion, and your solitary plant more of a chance to grow just a solitary plant that hopefully is the one you're interested in. If you like sort of the clump look and all the branches growing around, by all means leave the branches. They're not going to hurt your plant in any way. All you need to keep in mind is that the solitary, or the main stem of the plant, will grow at a slower pace than if you were to remove the branches. But again, it's just a matter of taste, and it's just a matter of what the purpose of the plant is. In my case, when I have a grafted plant, I want just the scion to grow, and I do want to reuse all the branches to create new grafts. So for that reason, I always prefer to pluck them off as soon as they're large enough to do so. Like I said, that is when they are large enough to produce their own root systems without drying out. Usually around 1 centimeter is a good indicator, but it depends on the species. This seems to be some sort of echinocactus, and those are very fast growing cacti. So these plants, even at a very small state, look how small this is, and it's already grown some pretty good roots. So it depends on the species, but for the most part, 1 centimeter is a pretty good sort of metric to go with. That's when I like to pluck them off. Place them in dry soil, wait a week, and then treat them as if they were regular plants. You don't want to expose them to too much sun right away. You want to gradually acclimate them to your growing areas, which are usually, higher in exposure, because that's what's optimum for your plants to grow. So you do have to acclimate these slowly, because they are very small plants. I hope this was helpful to you guys. I hope you liked the video. If you have any tips of your own or any comments, please drop them down in the comment section. If you have any ideas or any requests of videos you'd like to see, or things you'd like to ask me, drop them down in the comment section, or look for me on Instagram at East Coast Camanchaca and message me. Glad to help with any tips or any sort of questions of cultivation. Usually I won't give you an answer right away on Instagram, but I will create a video so that other people can benefit from the same question, because usually we all have the same sorts of doubts and questions when it comes to cactus cultivation. When we get started, we usually have the same sort of issues and things that we have to deal with. So it's good to create something that can, help a lot of people, rather than just answering one of you guys. I like to create a video, put it on here, and make sure that all of you can watch it and learn together. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you liked it. Catch you in the next video.